May I speak to you of death? May I show you while you listen that I understand death, and perhaps help you to understand death, and not to fear it when the time comes? May I tell you how to cope with grief, with the death of people you love? How you and the man or woman you love most can immortalize your love now while you live, so that death won't separate you? May I tell you what happens after death and while your body is dying? Will you allow me even to go so far as to tell you how to die? For there is an art to dying, and death is not something that happens tomorrow. When death comes, it's always today. I don't ask you to believe what I am going to say. I ask you only to listen and to depend on nothing but your good sense and the part of you that is most true and most real. Because death is rarely spoken of with any reality in our modern world, much of what I'm going to say may sound new and unfamiliar, so take your time. Allow yourself space and quiet to absorb it slowly. Also, please bear in mind that the reason you are listening is because you don't understand death. I'm going to tell you all about death, starting at the beginning with what death is and why we fear it, where the terrible confusion and lack of understanding begins. So if you allow your mind to react with what you think death is, or what you believe it is, you'll be trying to say what you don't understand and will miss the point. Be as patient and receptive as you can. Hear me through, please. What is death? Death is a dead body. See that death is only a dead body, and you'll understand death instantly, and never be perplexed or afraid of it again. But we human beings in our modern society are no longer simple where death is concerned. We can't see it as it is anymore, can't look at it objectively. We've handed death over, all the dead bodies, to others to deal with, to officialdom. We've opted out. Rarely do we see death anymore. How many dead bodies did you see today? How many have your children seen since they were born? How many have you seen this year? In your lifetime? In much older societies where people handled their dead, lived with the dead and buried their dead, they didn't fear death. By having to face it around them every day, they were continuously reminded of the simple truth that death is just a dead body. They didn't need to speculate about death as we do. It was there in front of them. When you live with the dead around you, you are actually in touch with death and you don't fear it. You don't fear anything you're in touch with. It's what you're out of touch with that you fear. Death is the unconscious part of our being. What we've done is to cut ourselves off from our unconscious. The result is extremely serious for us all. To be mentally healthy as a society and as individuals, we need to be not only in contact with the conscious part of ourselves, but continuously involved with the unconscious. The conscious and the unconscious are the two inseparable halves of your being. The conscious half is living, and the unconscious is death. Just as waking is the conscious, and sleeping is part of the unconscious. You're not afraid of sleep, because by sleeping every night you remain familiar with the sleeping part of the unconscious. But because you've lost all touch with death, the prospect of death appalls you. And don't let anyone try to tell you before the time comes that they're not afraid of death. When the doctor puts her hand on their shoulder and breaks the news, or when they suddenly realize that they are dying, let them speak then with such courage. Only the dying know what it's like to face death. Only those who no longer can imagine a way out. With no dead bodies around in our society, we've been forced to rely more and more on our imagination to try to keep us in touch with death. And we all know what imagination does, especially in childhood, when we listen to the fears and superstitions of elders, read frightening tales, and form images that stick in our subconscious for the rest of our lives. All of us have some such dreadful image of death in our subconscious, with not an iota of truth in it. In short, we've complicated death to such an extent with our imaginations that when I say death is only a dead body, it doesn't seem to mean enough, doesn't have enough substance, does it? It's too simple. We want something unbelievable to believe in, something to match our complicated, hazy imaginings, not the simple truth that anyone can see when they look at a dead body. So what does it mean, death is a dead body? It means, please listen carefully, that death can only be seen in a dead body. If you are dying at this moment, and if you are, I speak to you with deep respect and love. You can't see yourself as a dead body. If you ever do see your body, obviously you won't be dead. And that is precisely what happens, both to the living and the dead. We always see only a dead body, and it's never us. When you die, you'll become conscious of your dead body in front of you. And wonder of wonders, you will know the simple truth, which you could see now if you really tried, that there is no death for you. The only death is what you see in a dead body. Let me tell you what happens when your body is dying. I mean really dying, in the last few hours or minutes when you have gone unconscious for the last time as far as the world is concerned. There may be a period of unawareness such as occurs in deep sleep. Suddenly, your body with the people around it, the whole death scene, appears in front of you. In your amazement, you might not notice that the world of your body has moved away. Yes, moved, whereas you haven't. It doesn't move far to begin with, perhaps a meter or so. But you are actually aware of everything being uncannily separate from you in a way you've never known before. The world you knew so well as a sort of fixture around your body has moved back, and you are left looking at it, amazed, captivated, unbelieving almost, except that your awareness is so much more real and alive. This is when you see your own body completely separate from yourself. It might not have died yet. You might even see it breathing. But of course you're not looking through the body's eyes. You'll probably notice they're closed anyway. You have no body. You are looking from another place. But you can see, hear, and comprehend all that is going on. It's a wondrous miracle. You are enthralled. At this stage, people have regained consciousness of the body and live to describe the experience. They have reported that they left the body. But what they didn't realize or remember was that the body, and the whole world attached to it, had moved away from them, not them from the body, and that the whole scene had an incredible or indescribable perspective beyond looking from any spatial position. This is not spatial or sense perception at all. It is an altered state of consciousness, brought about by the body and the world moving away and leaving the individual conscious in the unconscious. Let me explain this in another way, because when the time comes and you are dying, no matter how far ahead that may be, you will find yourself aware of what I am saying now, and actually affirming to yourself, it's true, what he says is what is happening. This is because we're talking about the most important thing in your life. And what was really important in your life, you remember when you're dying. Why it's also important to understand what's going on when you're dying, I will explain later. So let's approach the death state in another way, by understanding the difference between death and sleep. When you go to sleep, you withdraw into your body. You go in towards the unconscious, which is death. But of course in sleep you don't go in that far. You withdraw into the subconscious, just below the conscious. Death, the unconscious, is the next level down. So the three levels of our being are the conscious where we are awake, the subconscious where we sleep, and the unconscious where we survive death. When you sleep or go unconscious, you merely withdraw into your body, and you can come back. But when you die, the world withdraws from you, pulls the mat from under you, as it were, and lands you completely in the unconscious, from where you can't return. But it's all right, because wonder of wonders, you discover there is no death. That death indeed is only a dead body. Death is the world's best kept secret. In fact, you are in the middle of an astonishing worldwide conspiracy, what could be called a macabre game of hide the body. Every day, 2,000 people die in the United Kingdom alone. The crematoria and graveyards in the big cities are booked up. Yet all we see is an occasional hearse carrying a box of flowers on it, or newspaper headlines, photos and television pictures, but no actual dead bodies. Why? What's going on? Have you ever thought about this? You could seriously ask yourself if there's a law against you seeing real dead bodies. And the answer is yes, several laws. You are forbidden to see the dead unless you're very closely related, and then not for long. You can't get into a mortuary to see death. The medical laboratories and museums are closed to you. Try to obtain permission to witness a cremation, and see if the affronted system doesn't make you feel like a voyeur or a ghoul. As an ordinary man or woman, you are not allowed to study death. Question death by acquainting yourself with the only evidence of it, dead bodies. You have to have an officially approved reason. I ask you very seriously, is there any better reason than the fact that it's going to happen to you? But society, in the form of the officials we've appointed and handed the care of the dead over to, won't stand for it. Such interest is regarded as morbid, eccentric, phobic, or unhealthy. And because society is only a reflection of the will of the majority, you probably have gone along with this attitude, and even now may find it a bit uncomfortable or distasteful, talking like this about the reality of death. Displaying dead bodies in public is most emphatically forbidden. Why? The interest is certainly there if we had the chance or the excuse. One of the longest perpetual queues in the world is to see Lenin's dead body in the Red Square Mausoleum in Moscow. So what has made us clamp this extraordinary censorship on ourselves? And what are the objections? Respect for the dead. There's no need to be disrespectful. People look at us while we're alive. Why not at our dead bodies? Health considerations, then. What has health got to do with you and your children seeing the dead in the medical museums, in the mortuaries? Why should such a natural thing as death be bad for your children to see? Why, as mortal beings, do doctors and undertakers alone have this right and privilege? Why shouldn't you be free to pay an entrance fee, if cost is an objection, and for the hours of viewing to be limited so that the officials are not hampered in their work? I ask you very seriously, is there any real objection to your seeing dead bodies, apart from the fact that such a simple approach would ruin the conspiracy of hide the body, and perhaps make us question our own and society's whole irrational proscriptive attitude towards death? Have you noticed that love seems to be going out of the world? That the world's idea of love is more humaneness and tolerance, which is not love at all? I'm not talking about a kind of loving. I'm talking about love. Have you noticed that while progress seems to be making living in the world easier, it's harder to find love? Love you can hold on to. Love you feel really cares, really belongs. Love that is really with you. Have you noticed how you're having to make more allowance for the forgetfulness of those who love you, and sometimes for your own lack of love? Incredibly, these are the symptoms of being cut off from death, the unconscious. The shock of this on the human psyche, especially over the last century or so, has created a galloping global neurosis, a mental disease peculiar to all of us who live in the modern world. Our obsessional hiding of the dead and almost secretive disposal of the bodies is a dead giveaway. It is human nature to hide or hide from the physical evidence of a neurosis. So no dead bodies are around anymore. As everyone suffers from the neurosis and its exclusive fantasies, the devastating effect on our lives is shrugged off as normal living, and the cause continues unperceived. But the fact remains that this neurosis is destroying the quality of life on Earth, your life, And as it does, each of us feels compelled to defend and justify a little more the purpose and worth of our own existence. Let me describe the symptoms in more detail. See if you don't recognize the underlying problem in your life and that of the modern world around you. We, people, are feeling redundant. Each of us feels more and more shut out from being loved and needed as a unit on the earth. Something, and nobody seems to be able to name it, is supplanting us. As much as we try to hold on to each other, even to those we love, there is an odd sense of creeping separation, of not quite being able to reach across. We come together in love and love-making, but the sense of distance, even when we are together, is often there, although we usually manage to push the thought away. It's good sometimes it's not, we say. That's life. Is it? Is that life? Or is it just another excuse so we can put up with living the half-life we do? Life is not living. Life is full and beautiful. Living as we do most of the time is covering up for the symptoms. Our love and feelings are more difficult to express, possibly because our loved ones don't seem to listen or to hear us. Yet another symptom of the neurosis. There is more moodiness, dissatisfaction, emotionalism and discontent around us and in us. We are simply not happy as often as we feel we should be. Joy doesn't last long. To the aging, the feeling at times is one of desperation. For the middle-aged and maturing, the mums and dads, it's becoming a more frequent moment of depression, not unlike the puncturing of long-held hope. And for youth and the young who cannot yet register the feeling directly, its effect is the obsessive searching for something new, something sensational, something for Jesus Christ's sake tangible and worthwhile, something to be so as to feel really needed. As the neurosis bites deeper, each generation finds it more difficult to express love and to be loved. The wonder of being alive, the uncontrived richness and simplicity, is going. And it is not due to technology, which in our blindness we would try to blame. We are dying inside, all of us. We are dying for the need to be once again in rejuvenating contact with the unconscious, the missing half of ourselves we have successfully erased from our lives. A dying person's main difficulty before losing full consciousness is an acute feeling of isolation. Not because they are leaving everything, as we might imagine, but because for the first time they perceive with alarming clarity that no one understands death. Although the people around them are loving and sad, and the doctors and nurses often devoted to the point of saintliness, the dying realize that without this understanding, they are all alone. The true love shown by others is vitally sustaining and comforting to the dying. But it doesn't lessen the anguish and frustration they feel at being cut off by the living's lack of understanding. Dying is a process of withdrawing into a new life, into a new consciousness. This the living have no awareness of, because they've deliberately turned their backs on it. The dying, through the dawning of their altered state of consciousness, see that not only do the living not understand death, but no one really wants to. That everyone, even the saddest, are too engrossed in living. The sense of distance and futility is awful. Consequently, the dying cut off from us before they die, as we have cut off from the dead. In many cases you will see the dying person actually turn his or her face to the wall, out of the sheer futility of trying to communicate where there is no understanding. Or they may appear to go apathetically vacant. You yourself must have experienced the worldly equivalent of this frustration, of having to give up trying to communicate with someone who just doesn't understand, or can't understand. If the people around the dying understood death by facing up to it before it happens, death would be a very different experience, an ennobling one for all concerned. The dying would communicate and die happily, and the living would know there is no death and live far more happily. As it is, however, you die all alone in our neurotic global society, even though surrounded by people who love and care. Have you noticed the awkwardness and discomfort of people when they're with someone who's dying? Or when they are forced to talk about the reality of death? Have you observed yourself on these occasions? Felt the self-consciousness, the embarrassed searching for something meaningful to say or do? Have you seen the grim look of sorrow, universally adopted to proclaim how seriously we regard the deathbed, without having anything worthwhile to convey to the one who lies in it? Most times, we might as well not be there. Flowers and cards we send to make up for our poverty of understanding, hoping that they will speak for us. What do flowers and cards say to the really dying? Nothing. Flowers and cards are only for the living, ourselves. We give such things to comfort and reassure us, not the dying, that we have done all we can, when really we've done nothing at all, given nothing of ourselves. True, we have loved them, and we do love them. But that love which means so much to us is no longer enough for the truly dying. That love we have for each other while alive is our means of understanding living. But such love does not give the understanding of death, or we would not feel deprived and so wretched when a loved one dies. We weep and mourn because our love for the other was not enough to help us to understand death, to allow us to cross the grave, the unconscious, with them while we still lived. Dying is a journey beyond mortal love. To stay with the dying all the way requires a much higher selfless love, immortal love. Who's going to give that love to the dying? Who's going to give it to your loved ones? Who else but you, by determining now to bring the understanding of death into your life? This is the highest form of human love, which is why it's so rare. What can you do to cope with the grief and loneliness the death of a loved one brings? How can you bear to walk into the house again? To prepare a meal knowing they won't be there? To open a wardrobe or see an empty chair, without breaking down and sobbing your heart out? How do you bear the nights, let alone the days? And how do you come to terms with the inevitable anger? Is there no justice in life? How can there be a providential power or God that permits such pain and misery? First, let me speak to those of you who are not suffering at this moment from the loss of someone you love. The way to protect yourself from future grief is to start now, today, taking responsibility for life. We are all taking responsibility for living, but not for life. We work and earn money to support the people we love most, or look after them by keeping a home. We love them, help them and guide them as best we can towards the future which we hope will be good and long. All that is taking responsibility for living. Taking out a life insurance policy on yourself for £50,000 is not taking responsibility for life. That's taking more responsibility for living. That insurance policy and all the love and care you give your children and loved ones is not going to ease in the slightest the agony they will go through when you die, or that you will go through when they die. So how do you take responsibility for life? You quit living off your imagination. You realize the truth of what I am saying. Every day, every moment, you face the fact of life, and not just the insurance policy idea of loving and living. The fact of life is death, that your beloved child, husband, wife, lover, mum and dad, every person you cherish is going to die. You think you already know that? That you've already faced up to this? When the death of your dearest comes, it's going to stun you, bowl you over. You're not going to be ready, are you? If you'd already faced the fact of life, you'd be ready, and death would be powerless to crucify you. But when it comes, you're going to go through all the agony I just described. Just like everyone before you, because everyone imagines, when it's not true, that they've already faced up to death. If one of your loved ones dies in 10 years' time, it will be just as terrible as if it happened now, won't it? 10 years' time, 10 years ago, is today. If it happened today to your dearest, are you any better prepared? The truth is, you don't believe in death. Death is something that happens to someone up the street. When death comes to the one you love most, you're going to blame some fate or other. You're going to react as though you'd been misled, as though it were news to you that this is a world of death. In short, you're going to act irresponsibly, immaturely, as though you didn't know what life's about because you thought it was about living. Life is about learning to live with death. When death hits you, you understand that. But the people in society around you, by offering sympathy and no solutions, will help you to forget the lesson and to go on living in hope. And so you'll suffer again and again, each time it happens to someone you love. As will your children after you, and theirs after them and the others you love, because none had the time or sufficient love to face the truth. Since you were a child and asked your first question about death, life has been trying to show you that this is a world of death. But it can't get through the power of your imagination, the neurosis, that tells you it's a world of hope. There's no hope in this world. The only hope is to see that. Certainly, behind this world is the immortal world of life after death, immortal like the sparrows that are always here. But until you realize that each sparrow dies, that each beloved pet you once wept over as a child is no different to the person you love most now, you can't share in that immortal life that knows no separation in death, and therefore does not need to mourn. Taking responsibility for life also means taking responsibility for the ones you love. Again, you are not taking this responsibility. You're doing your best, particularly with your children, but your best is not good enough. And what are you doing for the adults you love? To be responsible is to see that all the ones you love start talking openly about death and understanding death. That is true love. For if you truly love them, could you leave them with the agony of your death, which they will otherwise have to endure? Talk together of the reality of death as I am talking to you now. Don't let death surprise them. Introduce it to the family. Talk regularly. Let them no longer hide from it. Listen to what I am saying as often as you can until you get the idea. Listen together until you can start to talk openly and intelligently. What if someone won't listen? Very few want to listen. To reach them is love's labor. True love is not easy. Let the children hear. Always involve the children. Don't try to protect them for God's sake. They are the future of this understanding. Before we contaminate them with our neurotic notions, they know more about death than we do. But these days the younger ones are beginning to fear death earlier than ever. You can tell that this is happening when they retreat from someone who is dying or dead, instead of standing their ground with their natural innocence and curiosity. This is not necessarily your fault. The group neurosis infects the very young. Listen to the children's questions. Listen to their observations. But give them nothing that is not the fact, the truth. And always demonstrate the point you are making in life around you and in their own experience, not in their imagination. Don't ask them to believe in anything or to believe anything. The fact is that death is only a dead body. The truth is that life is everlasting. Neither needs belief. Take the children into the garden or the park. Show them death, dead bodies everywhere, dead leaves, dead insects, dead bees, dead birds, dead plants, dead trees. Then show them life. It is everywhere. Ask them, can you remember when you were dead? If the answer is no, you can say, that's because you've never been dead. There is no death, only dead bodies like these. If the answer is yes, you can say, if you can remember being dead, then you couldn't have been dead, could you? But I have not died yet. I'm only 3 or 4. No, and you never will. Only your body dies. Grandpa died. No, Grandpa's body died. If the child or adult should say, "But where do you go when you die?" you can say, "You go back to where you came from, the same as the leaves, the birds and the trees when they die." "But I came out of my mummy's tummy." No, you didn't. Your body came out of your mummy's tummy, just like the leaf came out of the tree out of the ground, and the bird out of the egg. You're not a body. Neither is the living beauty of the bird, the tree, or the leaf. You are life. You come out of your body like the beautiful living green on the leaf. Look, you're coming out of your body now, talking to me. Look how sweet and rosy you look. You don't look like that when you're dead. Neither does the dead leaf here, as you can see. A dead body like a dead leaf doesn't look alive, because the life that was in it, what you are now, has simply gone back to where it came from. Every night when you go to sleep, you go back into your body, don't you? When you're dying, all you do is just go further back inside your body, like the green and living beauty of this leaf went back while it was dying. Life that sings with joy in the bird, or that laughs and loves in your body, never dies. Look around you. Life goes on everywhere singing and being beautiful, because it knows there is no death. The death is only a dead body. Perhaps the child will then say, "But what if we're unhappy and crying? That's not beautiful." You might reply, "No, but people only cry and are unhappy because they don't know there is no death. Will you help me to show them, and help to make the world happier?" You are a player in the rigorous game of living. You can't blame the game if you don't believe the rules, or bother to remember them. The first rule of the game is, every player dies. None knows when it's coming. The youngest and the best often go first. Everyone has to play. The game goes on forever, or until you win. You win by finding death before it finds you. The prize is life. Now let me speak to those of you who have just lost the dearest person in your life, or who are still trying to cope with such heartbreak and loneliness. No one can know what you're going through until it happens to them. Nothing is so final, so utterly real as death. You have been sorely afflicted, and my love is with you, please know that. But you must get out of this. You must not let the pain kill or deaden a part of you, as it certainly will, if you get over it in time in the normal way, or if you carry it around unresolved inside you. There is a reason for the suffering death causes the living. It's to try to make you realize there is no death. People raised in the more simple cultures, who lived with their dead and buried their dead, understood this. They didn't suffer as you are suffering, and they had their wise men and women to instruct them in these matters. But all that has just about gone now with the dead bodies. You must use your pain. Don't try to get rid of it, and don't run from it. It will vanish and leave no scars immediately you face up to it by understanding it. And I am going to help you to do that. You'll notice that the pain comes in waves. For a time you are free of grief, and then suddenly it's upon you, and you're sobbing your heart out again. Without warning, you may find yourself weeping uncontrollably in public, or quickly having to leave a room of people to sob. Let me explain what is happening to you. When you love someone very much, you become attached to them. You do this by allowing an emotion of them, a sort of sensational replica of all your feelings for the person, to literally grow inside of you. Over the months or years, the emotion becomes a living part of you. It is as real and as sensitive in feeling as any physical part. Anything that happens to the other person, good or bad, is felt there. Through constant contact and thinking about them, you keep the emotion in you active and alive. When you are apart, the emotion makes you feel close to them, provided the separation is not too long. If it is, the emotion starts to ache for contact or news of them, and you feel lonely or depressed. When you do hear from them, the emotion in you is reassured and you feel better. Isn't this so? Please look for the truth of it in your own experience. When that loved one dies and you act as though that's the end of them, you cut off completely from the emotion, and it reacts violently. Remember, the emotion is a living, feeling part of you. You created it with your love. It is like your own child. And like a child, it is completely dependent on you for the flow of love and information you have given it for so long. To inform it, as you are doing now on the evidence of a dead body, that your love is dead, is as brutal as telling a child it is no longer loved. You are saying, "It's all over. No more love for you ever again. My love is dead." Do you see what you are doing? You are abandoning this living, loving part of you, and the part is crying out, "But I am not dead. Please don't leave me like this. Please love me. Come back." That is the terrible ache and pain you feel, and it makes you cry. Try to observe the truth of this for yourself. Please don't dismiss it, and don't just believe me. After a few bouts of weeping, you will become momentarily aware that it's not really you crying. Your body is crying and you feel dreadful, but somehow it's not all you. You are strangely detached. If you have not had this experience yet, try to be aware next time the emotion rises. Be very still and see for yourself. Don't try to stop the weeping, though. Just observe it. Because no one talks about these things, when we do notice such odd goings-on in ourselves, we tend instantly to dismiss or ignore them. Even the suggestion at such a time that we are acting or being insincere is just too contradictory. But when you do see it, don't be disturbed. It is not you who's weeping. You have nothing to weep about. Your loved one lives. It's the emotion, the attachment you nurtured in you that feels deserted and unloved, which is making your body weep and sob. It's crying for your attention and your love, because you've turned your back on it. By going on the way you are, you're cutting yourself in half. You've got to learn to love yourself. You've got to heal that open wound down there and unite yourself. I'm going to tell you how to do it. In fact, we're already doing it. If you look closely at yourself now, you'll notice that you're feeling lighter, more healed. That's because your emotional hurt hears and takes new hope from my love, my understanding of its pain. And so you feel less divided, more whole. You have to do for your hurt what I am doing for it. Until you get stronger, we can do it together. Keep listening to this tape over and over until you get the idea. Here you should understand the difference between love and emotion. Your love of the one whose body has gone is constant. It doesn't vary, does it? But the emotional pain you feel is not constant. It comes and goes. It comes when you're not loving. That is, when you're living in the past. When you think of your loved one as being dead by imagining them as they used to be. This makes the emotion terribly unhappy, and it weeps, or rather, makes you weep. You'll notice this also happens when you keep returning to places you both knew, trying to make some kind of maudlin contact. Or when you leaf sadly through the photograph album. Or indulge in self-pity about how miserable your life is now without them. In other words, every time you behave as though your love is dead and gone. Such sentimental journeys torture the emotion in you. People often try to console us at these times by saying that at least we have our memories, as though memories were a compensation. Memories are what has passed, what is dead. Memories are the cause of all your pain, because they make you believe your love is dead, when your love is not dead, only their body is dead. Every time you think of your loved one, and naturally you think of them as a body that is dead, the emotion which is alive in you protests, and you suffer. Think, and the pain restarts. It's as simple as that. Look at it, please. This is terribly important. Test the truth of what I am saying in your own experience. As soon as you think about the person in the past tense, you get emotional. You must give up thinking that your love is dead. As soon as you do, the pain will stop. Now let us see how you can do this. The wonderful truth and starting point is that your loved one is not dead. The death is only a dead body. The being you love is present with you now. Ever since they died, they have been trying to tell you they are not dead. But they can't get through to you when the emotion is there. While you are not emotional, they are there. That's why you don't feel the pain of separation all the time. Why sometimes you know without a shadow of doubt that they are present. And why you can even chuckle and say out loud to them some intimacy or private joke you shared. They are aware of everything you do. But they are not possessive. They only want you to love and be happy. By mourning for your love and brooding on how good it used to be, by wishing that they were back, by wanting to tell them how dear they were to you and how much you miss them, by doing all that you are saying they are dead, in the grave. Whereas in truth, they are with you at this moment, a living presence if you can be still enough to register it. Every time you think of your loved one as dead, you cut yourself off from their presence. You choose what they were to what they are, and they can't reach you. Haven't you longed for just one more chance to love them more? Then this is it. Imagine yourself looking through a window into a sealed room and seeing the person you love most weeping over your photograph and kissing it. Wouldn't you say, "Why are you loving that thing? That's not I. I'm here. Love me as I am, our love, the real being, not that substitute for love. It's distracting you, coming between us." Love is not kissing. Love is not looking back like that. Love is not a memory. Love is now. Your loved one knows exactly how you feel, how lonely you are, and how much you miss him or her. They are saying, "Love me as though I am there, and you will gradually feel the certainty of my presence. Each time you think I am dead, you leave me. Don't be sad. Don't cry. Be joyous as I am. There is no death." When you do this, the emotion inside you will once again feel your love flowing and start to heal. And the periods of pain and emptiness will reduce. Not because you have got over your loss by allowing that hurt part of you to pine away and die, but because by knowing that your love lives, you will have crossed the grave and made yourself whole. You and the person you love most can immortalize the love between you before one of you dies. Then when death comes, there will be no sense of separation, no pain and anguish of the graveside and after, because you will know your love lives forever. You do this by keeping your love alive while you both live, instead of allowing it to gradually disappear into familiarity, casualness, and habit. We all love. Love is the most natural thing in the world. But as we've seen, love for another while we are in these bodies grows in us as an emotional attachment to their physical presence or visible existence. We start to settle for the comfort and satisfaction of their physical presence, the habit of being together, rather than insisting on the constant presence of love which drew us together in the first place. The result is that when the loved one's body dies, our attachment to their physical existence is stronger than our awareness of their love, and we suffer terribly. We allowed them and ourselves to grow out of love. Just because you know you love your child or your partner doesn't mean your love is alive. How much casualness and compromise for the sake of peace are you getting away with, and allowing them to get away with, in the day-to-day living of your love? How often each day do you allow your child to be emotional, demanding and not loving, without taking the time and trouble to sit down and help it to understand what love is, talk to it of the reality of love? How much do you understand love yourself? How much have you ever talked about the reality of love, not the dream or disappointments of it? If you talk and demonstrate love early enough to a child, it will understand love from the beginning and not confuse love with just cute smiles, hugs and kisses, and saying "I love you." Love needs more awareness than that to stay alive and not to disappear into the habit of growing up or growing old. How often do you and your partner talk of love each day? How often each day do you examine the love between you in earnest conversation, and undertake one to the other to eradicate the habit and familiarity that has crept in? How often do you allow the other to get away with a quick peck on the lips or cheek before they dart off to something very important like work or bed, while your love dies? How often do you make excuses to yourself for the lack of a really loving life between you? How often do you feel like crying because all you've got is comfort, understanding, compatibility and children, but little vibrant, living love? If your love for each other can't survive being overwhelmed by comfort, satisfaction and habit, it certainly won't survive death. You'd better bring it to life again. You'd better start now. You'd better make some changes. Do some dying now, both of you, and it won't be necessary later. Start by talking together about death from the very beginning of your association, as you and I have been talking about it. If you can't begin an association on that basis, forget it, or forget about love. Even if your love is a child, you must discover together all you can about death, and never cease facing and sharing the presence and inevitability of it together. It is death that is going to seem to part you, but death can't part two loving people who have faced it and understood it together. Then you must be straight with each other about your love. Together, you must see that you are both taking love for granted, that it has become habitual. You must be able to tell each other where you feel casualness is coming in. And each must undertake to do better, giving the other the right to draw attention at any time to any failure on their part to show love. And all this must be done without emotion. You must try not to defend, excuse or justify your lack of love when it is pointed out to you. The object is love. So take the other's point and do your best, but do something. Don't accuse one another. Just point out lovingly and patiently where the other has failed. To accuse another is to be emotional, and emotion invites emotion, as love invites love. Only the fact can keep emotion out, and to keep to facts and not opinions requires much love. Don't go back into the past. Emotion, the death of love, is there, and you will wrangle unendingly. Love is in the present. Point out lack of love now while it is happening, and the other's love has more chance to deal with it without emotion. There is enough lack of love being demonstrated in all of us in the present, without having to go back into yesterday. You are doing this for your love's sake, not to score a point. Scoring a point is not love. You must demonstrate love to each other day in and day out. Find the way. That's love. Be still. The loving gestures that the world acclaims have become hackneyed by insincerity and loveless emotion. They are not good enough. You must put yourself on the line. Die a little for love. Start by acknowledging love in your loved one whenever you see it. Don't hold back. Don't be too tired. Come alive. Any loving action by them, a smile, a kind gesture to anyone, even if it is only to a plant in the garden, acknowledge it, saying, "That was beautiful what you just did. I saw love in you." And if he or she smiles back at you with love, don't let that pass either. Say, "And there is love in your face now." When you acknowledge love, you make love. You make more love. Please look at it in your own experience. When your love is recognized, you feel good, and you can't help but want to love more. You come alive. By acknowledging each other in this way, love will re-emerge between you, instead of emotion. Your relationship will become less and less a compromise. There will be less to argue about, and more to talk openly about, because love opens us up. Sulking and hurt silences mean that someone has something to say. Either they are not loving enough to get it out, or there is not enough love in the other party to hear them, or both. A final word on love. All love is grounded in physical lovemaking. If you are having sex, but are not truly making love, if the love-making act has become habitual, or if you don't like making love, if you are not a child and are too shy to make love, or have turned your back on it because of past disappointments, or if you receive no joy from the act, or have problems associated with it, you can't love anyone to the full capacity of your being, child, man, or woman. However, before the problems of physical love can be eliminated, it is necessary to start loving one another in the way we have just discussed. How to Make Love is the next tape in this Myth of Life series. Dying is an art. It is an art because it has purpose, that is, no practical objective. There's nothing of worldly value in it for anyone. Naturally, the living don't perceive the purpose of death, but the dying eventually do. Only then it's too late for them to return and tell us what it is. I would like to tell you the purpose of death, and in conclusion, to convey to you the art of dying. The purpose of death is for humanity as a whole, to build a bridge of love or consciousness between the world of the living and the world of the dead. Everyone who dies makes this crossing. Most make it unconsciously, as the animals and the rest of the species do. But the art is for the individual man or woman to make the crossing consciously, that is, to remain aware throughout the whole dying process. To the degree that a person is able to do this, they help to build the bridge with their own love and awareness. To die totally conscious, that is, in the state of immortal love or complete understanding of death and its purpose, is to become a crossing for others between the two worlds within the bridge itself. Christ did this, and since then others have done it. But the bridge is still dark and tenuous if we try to cross it on our own. Cross it on our own we should, as far as we can without holding on to another's consciousness. But if we have to call on Christ, God, or the love of others who have made it, to keep us unafraid and aware, that love and consciousness will be there. It is better to stay conscious in such love than to go unconscious on our own. Then, as far as we went and loved, we will have helped to build the bridge of love for others who follow. And our life just ended, as far as others or the greater good is concerned, will have been that worthwhile and purposeful. Fear prevents us from dying consciously. That which we don't understand we fear. I trust that the last hour or so has helped you to understand death more and to fear it less. But please don't be complacent. It is coming, and you are not ready. Now may I speak to those of you who have been told you are dying. Life on earth is wonderful, but it's not nearly as wonderful and as beautiful as the world behind death. Whether or not you believe in Christ or the prophets of any religion, they were not all fools. It's the leaving, not the going, that's the main problem, isn't it? Really, the leaving of loved ones, and especially small children if you have them. Try to remember that what looked after you will look after them. They'll get through. Tell the children seriously that the love you share is like a beam of light that connects both worlds, and that immediately you've gone, the beam will come alive. And if they can remember not to cry too much, as though it were you who'd died and not just your body, you will be with them, inside them, and they will feel your love and warmth. Tell them to practice thinking about you with love and not with sadness. Tell them that that will keep the beam clear so that you can travel along it from the land of love where you are going, to love and guide them in their daily life. Tell them when they think of you always to smile, even through the tears, because when you smile you can't cry. Tell them you are not afraid to die, because where there is love there is no death, and that they must never forget that. May I now speak to those of you who at this moment are truly dying. Some of you will go in your sleep, or suddenly while you are speaking. But most of you will shortly appear to lose consciousness and remain in that state until your body dies. First, look at the condition of your body and understand that your death is inevitable. It's all over. Face up to it. Your body is worn out, or irreparable. It can't go on. It was only a fine machine anyway, that you used to exist in. All who have died before you since time began have gone this way. Don't be afraid. It's quite natural. Dying, like being born, is all done for you. When it starts, you will feel yourself held in a process. You can't stop it any more than you could stop the waves on which you were born, your mother's labour pains. If you are a mother yourself, you know how powerless you were once the contractions started in your body. So it is with death, only the contractions are not physically painful. Relax. When it starts, don't try to look outside. Watch all the inner movements and sensations. Focus your full attention there. Much will be going on, extraordinary things that you couldn't even describe if you could speak. Let the process take you over entirely. You are the baby this time, going towards a new birth. Take a front seat on the inside at the astonishing performance of your body's death, and be aware of the even more astounding change that is happening in you who is watching. Give up. It is all out of your hands. Any feeling you have of something to do or communicate, ignore. It will cause tension. And tension, like fear, will cause you to miss what's going on inside. Remember, the purpose of death, the art of dying, is for you to remain conscious within all the time. Fear and panic cause unconsciousness. That's nature's protection. You black out. But then much of the wonder, the pure energy of the experience, is lost to you. In each life you get only one chance to die. It is a precious time and a precious gift, as you will see. Death is the culminating experience of living, the ultimate opportunity to perceive for yourself the whole truth behind existence. When you appear to go unconscious to the world, you are still conscious in yourself. You may perceive your body and the people in the room as I described earlier, but gradually the scene will recede and disappear, and you will no longer be interested in it anyway. Then there is a period of dreaming, but you can't tell the difference between dream and reality anymore, because the only reality you knew, your memory of the world, has now vanished. You are in the subconscious, beneath the memory, and it is as real as being alive again, only different. You may relive events of your life, or live experiences associated with the concepts of heaven and hell, or their equivalent. Finally, you will make the journey through death. Death is black. Death is frightening because there's nothing in it apart from yourself. It seems interminable because there is no apparent motion. But if you are still, you will be aware that you are stronger, freer, more yourself, more aware than ever of the reality of yourself. You know yourself to be yourself, which while you were alive you never knew. Death is a long black passage through to life, to which all that has ever lived returns. If you can find enough love or awareness in yourself, you will stay conscious and realize as you go deeper that you have been here many times before. But if your love is not yet sufficient to keep you awake, you will go unconscious. And when the journey through death is concluded, you will awake in a world equivalent to the love and consciousness you are. You will be more at home than ever before in your life. Either way you go, conscious or unconscious, you still arrive at journey's end. You will then realize that love is the most important thing in life, and that the world of the living exists purely for the demonstration of more love. You will see how far it is from love, and you will want to tell the whole world what you have discovered. But that won't be possible, because you have to discover that and declare it and live it while you live. Everyone must discover the secret of love for themselves, if not before they die, then after. No one can be told. To the extent that you truly loved others on earth and they you will be able to reach them and influence them. But you will find the world of the living a very dead place to try to get through to with the message of true love. However, according to the strength of your love, you will keep trying, until one day in earth time you return to the world of the living in a new physical body, another fine machine, and spend your life in it endeavoring to recall the mighty lesson you learnt from dying, that love is all. Be joyous as you go. There is no death.